of RAM at 3GB instead of just the 2GB found on the smaller iPhone 7. Now, of course, despite having just 2GB of RAM, the iPhone 7 has had no problem keeping all of the apps in the normal speed test open in the background, which you can't really say about some Android phones that have double that amount. So today, we're going to be adding a few more apps to the speed test in order to push each phone to their limits so we can see whether or not that extra gigabyte of RAM on the 7 Plus actually adds up to extra performance. But before we get to the speed test, I want to give a big shout out to Braintree Payments for sponsoring today's video. So developing your own mobile app can be complex, but integrating your own payment option no longer has to be. With Braintree, your business can accept nearly every type of payment from any device with just one integration. Everything from pesos to PayPal to Android Pay and whatever payment option comes next. Braintree's simple, flexible SDKs make your job and your payments easier. Learn more at braintreepayments.com/phonebuff. Alright, let's get to the speed test. So you know the drill, we'll kick things off by starting the stopwatches on each phone and then jump into the first row of system apps, where like you'd expect, the two phones perform just about the same as each moves on to the gaming row. Now, because both phones have the same NVMe storage, the same A10 Fusion processor, and they're both running on the same exact software, I don't expect to see much of a difference here in the first lap. In fact, there are only two things that can possibly make a difference here in the speed test. The first is obviously the extra gigabyte of RAM on the iPhone 7 Plus, which we already talked about, and the second is the difference in resolution with the 7 Plus technically pushing more pixels. But as you can see here, and as we've seen in speed tests in the past, it doesn't look like a higher resolution screen makes much of a difference, with the phones loading up and even jumping into the games here at about the same rate. And speaking of games, you may have noticed that we've added a few more games to this speed test than we normally do. In fact, many of you have asked why we include so many games in the speed test in the first place. And the reason is simple. Games are generally much heavier applications than other apps like Facebook and Twitter, so they take more processing power to launch and usually take up more memory and RAM. This in turn helps push each device to its absolute limits, allowing us to see which device actually performs better with a smaller amount of total apps in the speed test. So yeah, you may not play games on a daily, just as you may not create time lapses as both devices are finishing up here, but these kind of apps do a great job at showing you what you can generally expect out of each phone over the long run. And from the looks of it so far, the experience you'll get from the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus is going to be roughly the same, at least when it comes to initially loading up apps, with both phones finishing up the first lap with a time of 1 minute and 40 seconds. Okay, so here we go, the moment we've all been waiting for. Will that extra gigabyte of RAM make a difference? And yes, the 2 gigs on the iPhone 7 has been maxed out, with it having to reload Asphalt 8 as it does Angry Birds, allowing the iPhone 7 Plus to finally pull ahead. So let's see how the iPhone 7 handles the other apps. And okay, it looks like it's keeping some of the other apps ready to go in the background, so that's good news for the iPhone 7, with the 7 Plus looking to have all the apps open in the background, finishing with a total time of 2 minutes and 13 seconds, with the iPhone 7 and its 2 gigabytes of RAM actually holding up pretty well, having all the other apps besides those first 2 games ready to go, finishing 10 seconds later with a time of 2 minutes and 23 seconds, making the winner and new PhoneBuff style speed test champ the iPhone 7.